Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a little look at Factorio, which is really good, and I've been playing a lot of it. If you've been paying attention to anything, you'd probably have heard about this game before, and you'd have seen it before and all that kind of thing, because it has been an early access success story for the longest time, and it's still early access, but I found it on sale the other day, so I picked it up and thought I'd give it a crack. And it is like crack, let me tell you. I've played way too much of it in the last week or so that I've had it. And yeah, so I thought, why not? Let's have a little tour, a little look around of the amount of crap that I've built. Because I guess the best thing about this game is that it's got so much depth for something that's still in early access and still under development, although I don't really see what else they can add to it other than fixing bugs or quality of life improvements, that sort of thing. However, there are lots of mods and stuff which are, extend the gameplay so much more and make it a little bit more fun. So there'll be a little bit of stuff which maybe you won't understand if you don't know the game, but I'll try and explain some things, but I'm not going to try and be too explicit about the simple things. But the essential idea behind the game is that it's a big production line, and the goal of the entire thing is to be on this alien world, and there's aliens and stuff which we'll look at later, and basically mine its resources like copper and copper and iron and coal and all that sort of good stuff, and work it so that you can work it into steel and iron plates, and then make circuitry, and then make machines and automation, and basically end up with a huge factory with the end goal of producing a rocket and sending it into space, which I have to say I managed to do, and we'll get that later. But that's kind of the campaign, if you want, in quotations, is to work towards all of that, because that is really, I guess, the pinnacle of the production chain. But it's all about managing resources and trying to create an efficient and worthwhile production chain from multiple different sources, which is why this game is so much better than, just a puzzle game, because there's enough diversity and, I guess, depth in the production chains to really give you lots of stuff to do. Like, I've now thrown in like 90 hours on this game, and I've only just kind of gotten beyond the end game scenario. Now I'm trying to just make things better. And so, it took me that long just to figure stuff out, and I didn't know too much about it before coming in, and it's just a case of figuring things out. But before we go have a look around, I'll just take you through this sort of stuff. Like, this is my inventory, so this is all the stuff I'm carrying at the moment, which is whatever. This is a logistics window, so this is stuff that I've asked robots that I've built to automatically bring me. So, like, here's iron plates. So I always want 100 iron plates in my inventory, so robots that I've built will go find them, bring them to me, so that I've always got them. So wherever I am on the map, so long as I'm within the network, they'll be able to keep filling my inventory with stuff, and I don't have to go find it myself. But the main thing I wanted to talk about was this crafting window, which kind of shows off a bit of the production chain. So you can see, like, at the very top here, one of the first things you can build is a wooden chest. So you cut down some trees, you make a chest. Cool. Then you can make an iron chest, so you process some iron into iron plates, and you can see it requires iron plates there. And you can make an iron chest, which basically holds more. Or you can make a steel, the steel is made from iron plates. So you can see the progression there. Or there's things like belts, which you'll see all over because this is how we transport things around. So we need to make belts, you make iron plates, which is smelted iron. And you make iron gears, which is made from iron plates. So you can see the production chain beginning to build. And from that you can make a transporter belt. But if you want a faster transporter belt, you have to make the original one plus some more gears. So you can see the iron requirement ramping up. And if you want to make an express transport belt, you also need to bring in a liquid, which is your lubricant. And lubricant is made from processing oil. So you mine oil, you process it through a foundry or refinery, and you get heavy oil, and then you process that to lubricant. I think that's the chain. I can't remember. It might be light oil, like something like that. But there's, you know, a couple of chains to get to lubricant, there's a couple of chains to get to fast transport belt, and there's a couple of chains to get to iron gear wheel to then make these blue the best transport belts, and so on and so forth. You can see there's a whole lot of stuff here, which is neither here nor there, but there's a whole lot of stuff that it all progresses from each other. So, you know, you can imagine how deep some of these go. And a lot of that is based on your research and that sort of stuff. So if we come in here, at the very first thing that we might research, the green ones are the ones I have researched, the yellow ones are the ones that I haven't. So you can see automation. So key technology for automated mass production. So to do that, we need science packs, which we can make in our inventory, but then you can make an assembling machine. And an assembling machine is something where you can pump resources into, it'll make something and pump that out. Does that make sense? I hope so, because that's basically the very basics of the game. Is like you end up with these production chains, which we'll go have a look at. In fact, let's go have a look at right now, because if I zoom out a bit, you can start seeing how this gets quite complex. And now I must say, there are efficient and balanced ways of producing materials in this game. This factory has none of that. This is just brute force, me throwing things together. It has nothing to do with optimum amounts and balances and that sort of stuff. But it just is what it is. So, and there's a lot of inconsistencies, and some of the later game stuff is not getting produced very well at all. It's very inefficient. But hey, this is me brute forcing my way through the campaign and all that sort of stuff. So we've got a huge rail network, which we'll look at later. Well, it's not that huge. It's big though. But this particular rail stop, these trains deliver steel plates, so they're already smelted iron, and they just drop them off here, and then they get dropped off, and some of them come up here and they get smelted into steel plates, and then the steel plates, they go off elsewhere. A little bit comes off here to make some fuel for flamethrowers. These are all pipes, and oh goodness, we'll get into that. This could be a long one. This guy here is bringing in stone ore. I don't use a lot, but this train goes out into the wilderness where I'm mining some stone and loads up with all this stone, comes here and it gets all unloaded and put onto belts here, and then gets processed somewhere over here. I think, yeah, these smelters here, these are really old ones actually. They're not even, they still require coal to run, whereas like a lot of these other ones just run on electricity. So you can see how much I use the stone, but so, you know, this is kind of the basic beginnings of the system. So you can see as well, okay, these trains bring in just iron ore rather than the iron plates of the other one. So this is an older train stop where it just brings in the ore straight up, and then it gets the ore gets smelted into plates. And we come on here, and this is where the iron plates from the previous stop come in, plus these plates which are getting smelted, and they end up going onto this main line of iron. And as you can see, there's main lines next to it. Here's copper. And you see there's not much copper going on at the moment because I need another copper source. And like I say, this factory is not optimal. And I'm just running past a lot of stuff at the moment because, yeah, let's go have a look at the copper. Basically, there's 2 train stations here that bring in copper ore. You see they get quite empty between deliveries because I need to, where the ore is being mined, I need to either add another location for the trains to pick up some ore because they're not picking up enough, or I need to optimize those lines a bit better. So you see this one has got a lot, whereas like this train that just rocked up, it's only got 2 carriages with some ore in it, and look, it's already empty. So I should be filling up all these chests so that when it goes off to pick up some more stuff, there's a lot of ore left to smelt. But that's not exactly happening. So this line needs to be better optimized. Whereas this one seems to be doing not so bad because there's still lots left in the chests here, but it's still smelting away, creating some copper. So you can see roughly how the basic chain works. And if we zoom out and run around, you can see all of this stuff, which is a nightmare of things going all over the top of each other. Then you can see all of this stuff is built off that basic premise where there's ore, it gets processed into other parts, then those parts combine and get processed to make other parts, and so on and so forth. So you can see here, these are all green circuit chips, I guess. I can't remember what they're called. Electronic circuits. So these machines here are making electronic circuits. To do that, they need iron plates and copper cables. So these machines here are creating copper cables from straight copper and feeding it into that line, and then they grab it, make a circuit, and feed it onto this line. And you can see I've got lots of machines doing that, because these are actually, they take a while to make sometimes, and they're a little bit difficult, but you know, that's the way it goes. And then up here we've got red circuits, which are like the next level up, so they require the green circuits, some plastic, and also some more copper cable. So more resources, because you think the resources that are required to make the green circuits plus the rest. So thankfully that's actually seems to be producing, because this line is backed up, so it's producing more than we're using at the moment, which is good. Because ultimately you either want to be producing just as much as you're using, or a little bit more at every step of the way. Because you can see here, obviously this copper, we're using more than we're producing because it is not getting backed up. And like some of these machines back here are not even getting any copper because it's not reaching all the way down this belt. And it goes on. Now these little things here are roboports. Basically there's a network of robots that do things. Like if I just chuck this in my trash, we'll see before too long a bunch of robots will rock up. There's one flying there. To take all those walls out of my inventory. So there they go. They're going to go put it in a chest somewhere just to store it. And then if I ask for some more, they can go grab it from the chest and bring it over here. So that's what these ports are. They connect throughout the entire factory to create a network that the robots can move along. So they fly from port to port and they charge at these ports so they've got enough electricity. And down here in the right, when I hover over, you can see I've got over 1,000 logistic robots and just over 700 construction robots. So that's what logistic robots are, ones that move stuff around, and construction robots are ones that do construction and do stuff like, I can grab this and designate this area to be demolished. So there we go, some robots come out and demolish it, because I'm carrying a bunch of robots that can go do my bidding. And yeah, they'll come out and demolish, or I can place items that they can build. So I can like do that and tell it to go build it there, and there you go, it's built it. So that's what construction robots do and logistic robots do as well. Here I've got some interesting things. This is all stuff that I'm building but doesn't need to go on a belt. So things that go on a belt are usually things that need to be inserted into other things multiple times. So you can see here that all these main veins of belts, they have little belts coming off them, and that's to feed into other stuff. So here we've got some circuits that feed into here to make whatever this is, or whatever that is. It's feeding up there actually to make whatever that is, and so on and so forth. But at the same time, we've also got these ones where they're making things, but they're just ending up in a chest. So these are power poles. These are all different types of power poles, just because we need them. And so they end up in chests. And basically what these chests do is that they say, hey, there's all this stuff available to the network. So if I want some power poles, which you can see I've got here a standing request that I always want 50 power poles in my inventory. As it happens, I have 51 at the moment. So let's just get rid of that other one that's taking up a slot. And basically what that means is when I get under 50 power poles, a robot will come to this chest, pick up a power pole, and deliver it to me. Easy peasy. And basically, having as many things as you want in chests ready to go as part of the network means that wherever you are, you can just request anything without having to make it yourself. And we just completed some research, which was to increase robot speed, which I think I'm going to continue on with because I was kind of digging that. But it means they'll just move faster with that research. But this is endgame research because it uses different types of research resources. But that's basically what goes into assembling stuff, because these are all assembly machines where you can see this is actually making roboports, which are the ports that the robots go to. So that requires steel plates, gears, and advanced circuits, and you get roboports. It's not doing anything at the moment because these feed into a chest, and I've put a limit on it. I only want one row available at all times, just in case. I've also got 3 and a bit stacks in my inventory. 4 stacks if you count the hotbar here. So that wherever I am out and about, I can place roboports to keep expanding the network as I move around. Like if we come up here and we hover over, we'll begin to see the edges of the network as we get further out. I think this is about the edge of it. Yeah, so you can see where the orange ends and the green begins. So orange indicates the logistics network and green is the construction network. So basically construction robots will go further than logistic robots. So I'm trying to keep them in a relative kind of grid. So I'm just going to clear that area there. And we can place another one down. Oh, I didn't really clear the right spot, did I? Doesn't matter. I'm not really using this land for anything, so it doesn't have to be kept beautiful. Try and keep it straight. And because there's no logistics coverage there, I'll put in an extra one, even though it's a bit ugly and out of place. And then what we're going to do is we're going to use some large power poles, which we were looking at before. Because basically the different size power poles means they'll carry electricity over larger distances. So then I'll connect those up there and we'll just kind of plonk them down a bit. There's no real system to this. Like I say, it's not the most efficient setup. And because I cut down all those trees and it put heaps of wood in my inventory, all these robots are coming now to take the wood away. Because I have a condition here which says I don't want any wood in my inventory ever. So as soon as I pick up some wood, it ends up in the trash. And then a robot will come, pick up the trash, and bugger off again. So that's another good way of keeping your inventory managed. Now, at the same time, I have a couple of mods installed. If I hover over these, some things... Nope, that's not going to help. Sometimes it'll tell you a mod as you look at stuff. Yeah, you can see on the right there, under where it says pipe, it says base mod squeak through. Squeak through basically is a mod that lets you walk through things like pipes or between machines and that sort of stuff. In the base game, you wouldn't be able to walk through pipes. So that's the main reason I put it on, just for quality of life. And that's one thing I really like about Factorio, is there's a lot of mods, but also conditions in the actual game that you can set and customize to really play how you want to play. So at the moment, the whole time I've been playing, I've had this mod enabled. I've also got another one called Long Reach, which basically means typically you'd only be able to interact with things in a close kind of proximity to yourself, whereas with Long Reach I can interact with stuff that's much further away. So I could, like, I don't know, click on this chest here and put something in it. Just because. Even though I'm interacting with a chest that's way over there, and I'd normally have to run all the way over there, get close to it and do that. So it's just, you know, quality of life stuff. And, you know, that kind of thing I really appreciate, because it lets you play it your way. And this is a single player game. I'm not trying to compete with anyone, so who gives a shit? I've also got another mod called Hell Mod, which we'll look at later. But that's just to help you create a more efficient factory. But I only just installed that the other day, and I'll show you why in a second, once we've had a look at everything. But let's have a quick look at oil. So here is where the oil comes in. This was the first oil kind of setup I ever made. And so a train comes in here, oil gets unloaded into these tanks. You can see on the right there that all these tanks are full of crude oil. Then they go into these refineries, and they get processed. And what gets spat out is heavy oil, light oil, and petroleum. That then goes into these tanks and other tanks around. There's a lot of tanks around here. Through pipes. It all gets shoved through pipes, and we've got light oil here, petroleum here, and heavy oil here. And then they all get used for different things. So, to look at some more production here, eventually we're making sulfuric acid. But to do that we need to make some sulfur, which requires petroleum, water, and that goes into a chemical plant. And then the petroleum water gets processed into sulfur, which then goes on a belt, and then the sulfur and the iron and water has to be piped in, gets sent in here, and that gets made into sulfuric acid, which gets piped out and stored in these tanks. Because sulfuric acid then gets used as an ingredient for other stuff, and you can see up the top here there's more tanks of sulfuric acid, and yeah, that's great. And then all around the place I've got these guys who, one of them, these use light oil, these use petroleum, these use heavy oil, these use heavy oil, and they're all making what's called solid fuel. So it basically turns these liquids into solids, and the solid fuel is kind of the second rate fuel. When you first start out, everything's powered by coal, and then eventually you end up with power plants and that sort of stuff, so you can run everything on electricity. You don't need coal anymore. That's why we've got, you know, electrical poles all over the place. But in place of coal, you can then use solid fuel, and then eventually you use rocket fuel, which is made from solid fuel. So if we follow this down, we can see these machines, they're making rocket fuel. So there's all this solid fuel here that they're pulling from, and you can see all the rocket fuel that's getting placed on the belt here. And then they both get mixed up in here, because this is the main line that I use to power the power. Essentially, there's little bits like this so that every time this train stops, there's fuel coming in here, and the train gets loaded up with fuel so that it can keep loading. And you can see it's got a mix there because I don't really care. Like, I know it's not ideal, but I don't really care. But if we follow this fuel line all the way along, and some of my lines do reach fairly far and wide, so again, that's another reason why it's not optimal. But these, you can see here, this is basically a big kind of power setup. And this is one of the earliest ones. Like, these use steam engines, which is an early form of making power. So essentially this is a boiler, one of these. They take fuel from the line, so originally coal or rocket fuel or, you know, anything. So this guy's got coal in him at the moment, and he'll probably keep taking coal. So this is this belt's basically a big mix of anything, because you can see there's coal coming in here as well. Because essentially I do not want these guys to run out of fuel, because if they do, we run out of power, and that's a bad thing, because then everything shuts down. So basically they take water, and if we come right down the other end, you can see there's some water pumps here, pumping water in, and then it goes through all these boilers, and they've all got fuel to them. You know, heat the water, create some steam, push the steam into these steam engines, which then you can see on the right there, they output up to 900 kilowatts for each steam engine. Cool. And so when you have lots and lots of them, and there's more over here, and one of our trains is stuck. Oh no, he's out of fuel. How did that happen? Maybe this guy doesn't get given much fuel. Here you go, buddy. We'll have to check that. You know what? We need to fuel him up here. Okay, well, let's put an inserter. So this is a little robot arm that basically... Oops, we need it the other way. Which picks up items and places them from one side to the other. So what I'm going to get him to do is I'm going to give him one of these chests. And this is a particular type of chest called a requester chest, where I can basically say, hey, I want this chest to have rocket fuel, and I always want it to have 40 rocket fuel in the chest, because that'll be plenty. If it's always got 40, it'll have plenty to fill up the train. And because that is covered by this power pole, next time the train stops here, he's going to shove some rocket fuel into the locomotive so that it won't run out of fuel halfway along. See, here it is, but, well, we need to wait for the rocket fuel to make it to this chest first. So eventually some robots here, these guys. Let's just make him stop for a second. So yeah, you can see it's passing fuel into the locomotive. And now he's full. So he must have picked up some fuel on a previous run. Interesting. Either way, he's never going to run out of fuel now because there's this guy here to make sure that he'll get fuel at the stop that he always goes to. Let's send him off again. But anyway, back to our power situation. So, we're making power through steam generators, and then we've got these banks of what are called accumulators. So they take extra electricity. They're basically a battery bank. So any electricity that's being generated that is not being used gets stored in these dudes. And you can see also on the right here that there's a bar there saying that they're currently full of electricity. So when you're creating too much electricity, these guys get filled with... They store electricity. When you're not creating enough electricity, they kick in, and the electricity that they're storing gets discharged into the network to basically cover any kind of brownouts, that sort of stuff. So you can see across the map I've got a few banks of these guys, and that guy got broken up by a train track, but that's okay. So that's one way of creating power. And I also have some more. You can see the fuel line continues up this way because there's some more up here on the map. But yeah. Another way of creating power is solar power, which are these banks here. And by the way, these layouts and everything, these were ones that I found online as optimal kind of setups. So the balance between solar panels and accumulators here is kind of 1-to-1, as in this amount of solar panels will create enough power during the day and enough excess to charge up these accumulators that will then cover the night time when these solar panels are not being used, if that makes sense. So these are designs that I got online, and I built them and then made a blueprint of it so that I could just copy it again and again. Because basically once you've made something, you can put it in your blueprint book like this, and you can see there's that solar panel there. So I can basically select that, and whenever I want, I can just kind of plonk down. Say, oh crap. That's what happens when you get run over by a train. There's no real downside to it other than it's just a bit finicky dealing with your inventory because you got to come pick it up again. Oh, what a pain in the ass. Thankfully, it's not that far away from where we started. That does happen. You do need to pay attention to your rail network and where your trains are. Here we go. So first of all, I'm going to put my power armor back on because that gives me different benefits. Then I'm going to transfer over all this stuff. So this is all the stuff that I had on me. And the robots are basically, at the moment, they're all trying to fill in the logistics requests that I had for stuff that I now don't have in my inventory. So they're going to double up on a lot of things, which is the annoying part of dying. Because it takes a little bit of inventory management to get things together. But if we could have a quick look at the power armor that I mentioned, basically this is stuff I'm wearing. So I have a couple of fusion reactors which create power, like electricity. I've got a bunch of batteries which store the electricity in case I use too much. I've got an energy shield which basically protects me. It's like a shield because there are hostiles in this world. I've got 2 roboports on me, which basically means I can hold and charge and use up to 50 of my own robots. I've got night vision, which basically means it doesn't get dark at night. And I've got 3 exoskeletons, which means I move faster. And I've got 2 personal laser defense, which means it just shoots lasers at anything that wants to try and kill me. So there's that. So now we have way too many of everything. So I'm actually going to trash a whole bunch of things. Now these different inserters are all they're different arms that do the same thing. So this one is a long inserter, so it'll take things from 2 tiles away. This is a short inserter, but it's fast. This is a filter inserter, so you can tell it only to pick up a certain type of resource. This is a stack inserter, which means it'll pick up big stacks of things. And this is a stack filter inserter, so it's basically you can pick up big stacks of things, but you can designate which things to pick up. There we go. Hopefully that makes sense. So as it is, yeah, look, let's get rid of this. Get rid of that. Don't need that. So yeah, there's always a bunch of stuff that you want in your inventory, but there's always a bunch of stuff that you don't want. Like even on your hotbar here, there's things you don't want all the time, but there's things you do want sometimes. Like I usually like to have that, because this is a deconstruction planner. Basically means I can select things to automatically be deconstructed. These big chemical plants and factories and things I don't generally need. I've got a locomotive here, but I don't really need that. I've got a tank somewhere. Oh no, the tank's parked back in the parking bay that I made. Yeah, I generally don't need a lot of these things on the bar so much. It's more stuff that you use very regularly, like belts and inserters and all that kind of stuff that, you know, it actually makes a bit more sense to have on your bar. So anyway. So yeah, solar power. So yeah, with a blueprint of this, I can basically just copy it as many times as I want, and because I'm automatically making all the components used to build this, the robots will go off and collect the components and bring it back here and build everything. So, you know, that's really cool. And if you look on the map here, you can see these big blotches which are all our solar panel arrays, and you can see there's a bunch of whatchamacallits, accumulator banks here. But then also down here I have nuclear capabilities. So again, uranium ore comes in via a train. These trains are just sitting here because this is kind of like my train yard. So when I had extra trains that are no longer being used, they just get parked here until I want to use them again. But anyway, uranium ore comes in here, and then they all hit centrifuges. And what a centrifuge does is it splits the uranium ore into, or it processes it into two types of uranium. So there's uranium-238, which is obviously abundant, and then there's uranium-235, which is the good stuff, but you get about, I don't know what the ratio is, but you get like 7 for every 100 that you process, or even every 1,000, I can't remember. You don't get much. So that's why there's a bunch of dudes here, and these lights actually, they're just a little funny thing that you can do, so you can wire things up. So basically if I take that out, the light goes off. But then if I put it in, no, I can't because it's already filled it up with other crap. But that's okay. Basically these lights initially were to show me where the good stuff is. So if it has this good uranium in it, the light would turn on. But now that we're kind of way ahead in time, well, we can see there's none in this one because the light's off. But let's make that happen. Yep, light's back on. But now that we're way ahead in time, it doesn't matter so much. So essentially, that processes the ore, and then this guy picks up both of those and some iron plates which are coming in via robots, and it creates fuel cells, uranium fuel cells. Those uranium fuel cells then get shoved into these nuclear reactors. So we can see we've got chests here where the robots take the fuel cell over to here, shove it in the chest, and then these arms take it out of there, put it into here, and it burns it to create heat. These pipes connect it all up to these heat boilers, which take heat and water to create steam, and then to these turbines, which are better than the steam engines, but they require much hotter steam to work. So they're more nuclear level. So they spin away and they pump out power through the turbine. Makes sense? Cool. And again, this is not a design that I came up with. This is one I found online. Because figuring out the ratios of, you know, the balancing between, well, how many steam turbines are appropriate for how many heat exchanges and steam, and does my head in, I tell you. And, you know, that's why, like I was saying before, how this is kind of, you can play how you want to play. I'm more than happy just to download this and plonk it down, because sorting out power is not something I really find that fascinating about this game or enjoyable, because it's a very definite kind of model where it unless you get it right, it's either going to work way over efficiently and you're wasting resources, so it's really hard to keep up with how many resources it's using, or it's going to work way under efficiently and you're constantly trying to create power without having enough power to create the power, if you know what I mean. You know, like all the stuff that goes into making these fuel cells requires power. Thankfully it's less than what we're generating with this guy, because if we look at our power network by just clicking on one of these, we can see we're actually In our accumulators, we've got 9.4 gigajoules, which is fairly good. But from our steam turbines, which are only being used on this nuclear setup, we're making 100 megawatts. And you go, yeah, cool, whatever, that's 100 megawatts, who cares? But you can see at the moment we're demanding 220 odd megawatts. This is how much we're using at the moment. And this is how much we're producing to satisfy that. But our production is way down. Like, we have the potential to produce this much. So we could potentially produce over a gigawatt, which is pretty cool. Whereas at the moment we've got all our solar farms are creating 75 megawatts, and our original steam engine setups are creating 50 megawatts. So just this one nuclear power station is creating over 130 megawatts right this second. So you can see how you need to balance all this sort of stuff. And you can also see what is using that power. So at the moment, electric furnaces, which is at the very, very start of the production chain, that's the stuff that smelts ore into plates and other materials. That's using the very most amount of power because we've got shitloads of them in the base. And the second one is the assembling machines, which are the ones where all the resources go into. Like, this is an assembling machine. This is an assembling machine. And yeah. But anyway, just to look at the nuclear production a bit more. So we get power cells in, they get burned off, and then they get discarded. And then they get taken over here for the nuclear waste. And this machine processes the nuclear waste, so it uses unused up uranium fuel cells. So that's the empty container, basically, of the fuel cells that get made. And it turns them into uranium, whichever one this is, I forget what's it called. Oh, look, doesn't matter. This stuff, uranium-238. And then this little machine here, this is an interesting one because it kind of gives you infinite uranium, and it's a really good way of ensuring you have enough of uranium-235, which is the good stuff, but it takes basically a lot of it to get there. So what it takes is it takes 40 235s and 5 238s, and it produces 41 235s out of it. 41 and 2 238s. So you basically shove a whole lot in to get one extra. But as you can imagine, over time, that compounds and it keeps getting more and more and more. And you can see now, look how much we've got in this chest, which is where it's producing from. And then look how much we've got ready to go. And then we've got this stuff already here. And we're even getting our ammo. See, these are magazines of bullets. And we're putting uranium with the ammo to create uranium rounds. So my ammo that I use... Actually, since we died, we don't need this pistol anymore. I like to get rid of it. But the ammo that I use for my machine gun are uranium rounds. So that means that they're basically the best kind of rounds you can use in a gun in the game. But that's all produced from nuclear waste and that sort of stuff. So it's kind of a good little system that is self-sustaining as long as you've got some ore to get yourself started. But even when we run out of ore, we can make plenty of this from the waste, and then we can make plenty of these guys through this system of enriching. Basically, you take a shitload of this and a little bit of that, and you get a little bit more of this. Does that make sense? I think so. Anyway, what else can we look at? Well, for now, let's just have a quick look at the map. See, if we zoom right out, we can have a quick overview. See, now that we've had a quick... You can see these are all production facilities and that sort of stuff. This is where we started with the iron being smelted and that kind of thing. But then as we zoom out, you can see this is kind of the original factory, as it were. And you can see the main lines of products coming up here. And these are all the assembly machines that are shooting off it. And it looks quite cool. Like, I actually think it's quite an interesting kind of map to look at because it's groovy. All these grey lines are train tracks, by the way. And yes, I know they're a complete mess, but we'll look at that shortly. We'll probably look at that next, actually, because that, to me, is like one of the funnest things about the game. Yeah, but you can see all these little blue dots are roboports, so that's kind of the network where the robots can get to. So like over here, there's nothing for the robots to look at. But if we go further out, you can see all the red are aliens. Now, talking about customizing and how to play it your own way, that's one thing that I have done to make it more enjoyable to me, because I'm not really into the whole surviving against hostiles kind of crap. So you may notice that if you're familiar with the game, a lot of people around their borders would have things like turrets and laser defenses and all that kind of thing. I don't, because I have a setting in the game turned on where the aliens don't attack unless I attack them first. So they're never going to come and attack my base, because ultimately I'd turn them off completely if I could be bothered. Because it's just a part of the game I'm not really interested in. But hey, I like that there's the option to turn it off, or at least minimize it as much as you can. So every now and then, like at the moment I'm doing new stuff here. Like I've kind of started a new production line over here that has nothing to do with this stuff. For purposes we'll get to probably towards the end. But I basically drove around here with my tank, killing off every single alien I could come across. Just to kind of clear out all this area so that I could use it, knowing that they're not going to start coming in and repopulating and all that kind of thing. So, but there's that option if you want to play the game with a bit of hostility and a bit of, you know, almost like strategy and survival tactics. You can set them to the point where the aliens will evolve the more time you spend and the more you attack them, so they get tougher and meaner and harder and stronger. They'll also expand, so they'll try and take over your territory. Like this is kind of the only ones I can see at the moment, but you can see there's a little alien dude. And there's dudes that's here, these guys that sit in the ground that pop out. But these are like their hives, so they'll be planting like hives all the way through as close as they can get to your base kind of thing, and they'll keep attacking you and, you know, all that kind of good stuff. But I'm just not interested in any of that, and, you know, whatever. That's how I like to play, so that's how I play. I'm much more involved with just building all this kind of shit. And you can see here I eventually built another drop-off point for oil to bring more oil into this area rather than the original setup. So now there's this side as well, when these guys are, you know, processing raw oil and bringing it back into the system, and here's a train that's dropping off some oil and that sort of thing. And this train's even dropping off some solid fuel, because we were making solid fuel elsewhere, just to ensure that this line of making solid fuel, which then goes and fuels all the boilers, never runs out. But you can see I've like landfilled some bits here to get access to kind of this area, which was a big lake. So I've kind of man-made my way into another train station here and that sort of thing, which, you know, all that stuff to me is like a lot of fun. Not to mention the trains, but yeah, we'll get to that. So the train started very simply with this kind of circuit here, because this is the very first one, and you can see down here like there's coal being mined here, and it goes to this train station, and then a train rocks up and it loads up all the coal. There was copper being mined here, but it's now mined out. So now there's copper being mined down here, and you can see some of these mining things have kind of stopped working because they've mined out as much copper as they can, and that's why this belt is fairly, you know, it's not full, it's not saturated. So that's why when this guy rocks up and gets loaded up, he doesn't actually get a lot. Like, the ideal thing is to have each of these chests full of ore, because there's so much ore coming in that when the train rocks up, it just fills up the train within like 2 seconds. Train buggers off, and it continues filling up the chests like infinitely. But as it is, this mining field is getting a little bit lackluster because, you know, it's starting to weaken and go dry kind of thing. So, you know, but that's basically why we need trains, because these ore patches only exist in certain locations, which are, you know, randomly generated by the map. So you see down here as well, we've got another copper mining field. So there's copper ore being mined here. onto all these belts, and these belts come in here to feed these chests. See, these chests are filling up nicely. So when the train comes here to stop and get filled up, which I think it just did actually. Yeah, because you can see these are all saturated. So the train comes here, gets filled up, and then buggers off real quick. Because, you know, there's nothing holding it back. Same here for iron. This is iron ore. And we can probably see... Oh, look. There's another oil processing facility up here, which... Yeah. This is where we're making more solid fuel. And we're also making more rocket fuel. And more solid fuel. So you can see trains come in here and drop off more oil. It gets... There's a lot to it. This is the very first oil field that I started. See, these purple doohickeys are where oil's located. So you shove a pump jack on there and pump out oil into tanks. And then those tanks come down to these tanks. And they get... A train stops here and it gets pumped into the train. And then the train comes down here to its original stop and sits there until it's empty. So you can see, there's a lot to it. And this is the endgame item, which is the rocket silo. And this is the very first one I built. And we might actually get out of this map view and actually just go walk up there and have a little gander. Because that is kind of the sum of all things, if you want to call it that. And if you've seen it before, cool. But if you haven't, it might be a little bit interesting. But just to show you the extent of how far the game takes it in so much as, you know, resource chains and that sort of thing. So this rocket silo that we're going to look at, all the resources for it that are being built locally, which are these boxes here. So basically this box requests rocket control units, and those control units are being made here. However, you can see they're not really doing much. See there, one went in there. Robot will come pick it up and take it up there. But they're not really doing much because the ingredients they need are these speed modules, which are these blue things, and these processing units, which are the purple units, which you cannot see because there's none there. Why aren't there any there? Well, because this is where we process purple units, and they need red and green circuits. And you can see there's not a lot of green coming in. So there's not really enough purple coming through to be able to satisfy it. What's more, the line gets split to this box where we then provide purple circuits to other things. You can see a robot just came and picked one up then. So, you know, we're not getting the throughput that we need to keep it constant. So that's one thing. And that's why this is holding back this. But basically what this does is it takes those control units, some rocket fuel, and these low density structures which are being made here. You see they require steel, copper and plastic to create low density structures, but we've got a full chest there. And they all get combined to create rocket parts. So for every, I think, 10, they create one rocket part. Yeah. And then every one rocket part advances this by 1%. So you need 100 rocket parts to have a rocket ready to launch. And if you think about, so we need 10 of these in there to create one rocket part. We need 1,000, I think. No. Yeah. Yeah. We need 1,000 of them to create a full rocket. And then once that's done, we add a satellite to the rocket, which also requires a lot of resources. Yeah, we're building satellites over here. Somewhere there. So satellites need a whole bunch of low density structures, solar panels, accumulators, radars, those purple processing units which we're not producing because we don't have enough resources, and more rocket fuel. So that's a shit ton of resources just to make these guys. And you want one of those to go into the rocket as well, because when you launch the rocket with a satellite, you get science packs. And science packs are what you use to research, like this, researching robot worker speed. You get these ones by launching a rocket into space with a satellite. And all the previous ones as well you have to use, but they take resources in their own right. So you can see here I'm making purple science packs. To make purple science packs, you need furnaces, assembling machines, and electric engines. So this guy's making electric engines, but not very quickly. But that doesn't matter. But if we come over... Where's the other guys? Oh, there's yellow guys being made here. So these are yellow science packs, which need batteries. Again, the purple units, which aren't being made very quickly. Some more speed modules, which, again, they don't get made very quickly. Copper cables. And they get produced and sent down this line. And this line is huge. This line's super, super long. It goes all the way through down to where we start, basically. So you can see the purple guys here. Going all the way down to these machines. These science labs. And you can see all the pretty colours. So we've got red and green, which get made close by. See, red's the first one that you make, so that's why they're there, because that's where I started. Green's getting made up here. You can see their line coming in there. Purples get made way back where we were. Blues actually get made here. And yellows get made way back where we were, which they come in here. And grey also gets made somewhere up here. I forget where. But that's another science pack that comes in. And then there's also the white ones, which come in from launching rockets. So only these labs have access to the white ones, but that's okay. There's no real rush on how long it takes for research to happen, because it just takes as long as it takes, because it uses all these resources to, yeah, research stuff. So basically, the more you have working on it, the faster it'll go, but at the same time, if you don't have the resources for it, then it'll just take longer. It's not like it's going to shut down the entire system. In fact, sometimes it's best not to research something, because you don't have to use all the resources required to create all these packs. So, you know, that can be a bit of a head fuck. So, but the main thing is, though, that's what is going on with this rocket. And that's the end game. Once you launch one rocket, you can see, I don't know if you can see down here, it says products finished 4. So I've only been able to make 4 rockets and launch them, which is not very good. There's a unwritten kind of challenge I've found in the Factorio community about launching 1 rocket every minute, because that takes an ungodly amount of resources. But we'll talk about that later, because that's kind of not my next project, but getting rockets up regularly is what that new development is all about. But let's have a look at the rail system. So railways are more complex than they look. You don't just lay down track and go for it. You have to create train stations, then each train needs fuel, which is cool. You just make it get loaded at a stop. But then you give it orders of where to go. So this guy, I've got a shed load of different stations here. So these are all the stations that I've made. And the naming system is not that great, but it makes sense to me. So this guy hits the southern ore loop and goes to the iron east pickup. So he basically goes way over here somewhere and picks up iron ore. And basically, when his cargo inventory is full, or after 10 seconds of inactivity, where i.e. nothing gets loaded, nothing happens for 10 seconds, then he takes off and comes back here, which is this stop here. And he'll end up unloading then until his cargo inventory is empty. But if, say, these chests are all full and everything, because other trains stop at this stop as well, after 2 minutes, he fucks off. And he goes to load up again at the ore thing, which is basically what he did then when we saw him drive off. Or if there's 5 seconds of inactivity, which basically means if nothing happens for 5 seconds, as in, you know, he's not unloading anything, because you can see, like, this guy at the moment, he's unloading a real trickle. So it's worth getting the trickle for a couple of minutes rather than getting him to bugger off too soon. So that's what that guy does. You can see him on the map here. He's going to head down to this train stop here and pick up some more ore. So, every train has those sorts of orders. So this guy is going to the coal pickup, and he comes to this coal drop-off. This guy is going to a different iron pickup, but he comes to the same drop-off. You've seen probably a couple of trains shooting through here. All that good stuff. But that's why I always have a locomotive in my inventory, because essentially then I can get around the map fairly quickly. So I hop in, give it some orders. Where do I want to go? Let's go... Let's head to the south. No, let's... Yeah, okay, whatever. We can head there. And basically, he'll take me there. And the reason I do it automatically rather than just manually drive around, like you can just manually drive around. But I do it automatically so that he'll obey the signals. And he won't crash into things like that guy. So I've brought us down here just as a kind of... This is a remote location. To talk about signals, because signaling is the real pain and the real joy of railways in this game. So this is a very simple setup. Trains come in here, they go one way around here to then access this railway station, which is a one-way stop. So this guy's going to show it beautifully right now. So he just came in, stopped there, and he's getting loaded up. Unfortunately, we didn't have full things, so this train, this carriage at the back isn't going to get loaded any more than that. The ones in the middle probably get more, yep. Just the nature of it, because that's how this ore is getting fed into these chests. So, what that means is, as far as signaling goes, because he can also come out on this same track, and you can see the same track he came in on, he's going out on. So they're both... Trains going both ways share this same track. I don't have two tracks side by side, and both of them are one way. So that's why we need signals. So you can see at the moment, this signal for going that way, it just turned green again. Because while he was there, it's saying, don't go, because there's a train there. And we don't know if that train is actually heading towards us or away from us. So if he's heading towards us, you don't want to get on the track there. And look, blue, there's something, there's something on the track. For a moment there, so maybe. But whereas this way, it's green, because the way it works is you have signals and then you have chain signals. And this is where we're going to get a little bit confusing, but maybe it's interesting to anyone else, but it's basic logic. A signal, you think of it as breaking the track up into sections. So a signal basically goes everything past this until the next signal, which I think there's actually another one down here. Yeah, right here. So between that signal and this signal is its own independent section. So this signal goes, hey, anything after this until here, turn this red if there's a train on here. So if I plop down my own locomotive right there, see it turns red. But if I pick it up and actually put it at the station, after that one turns red because, hey, there's a train after this section. But this one stays green because there's no train in this section between that one and that one. So that basically allows trains to move in here and free up this track for anything else. But where a chain signal comes in, if this wasn't a chain signal, it would be looking at the space between here, and that's it. And you can see these signals changing. And that's because they're chain signals that go further along. If these were just regular signals, it wouldn't care. It would only look at this section here. So if there was a train in this section, it would go red. But any other time it would stay green, because every time this section is empty, it would be green. And you can see how that might not be, desirable. Like, maybe there's a train sitting right here. So this one, it might say green. So your train will come up here, and then this one will be red because there's a train here. And it'll stop here. But then no one can get out because that intersection is blocked. Make sense? Cool, because we're going to get even more complex. A good way to show it is actually further up here as well. So, but the thing with chain signals is before we get too far ahead, chain signals look at the signal ahead. So you can chain multiple chains, like this, that's a chain, That's a chain. That's also a chain. That's also a chain. So essentially this signal is looking all the way ahead here. Even further, even further, even further. It's looking way up to here to see if there's a path. It's looking at these two signals here. Because these two signals are basically breaking this, and this one actually. They're all breaking this section to say... In fact, I don't think we need that one. Yeah, we definitely don't need that one. We don't want anyone to think they can go up this track. This is a one-way. But they're looking at these signals to say, hey, is there a path forward? And because that's where this splits, that's why it's broken up into that section. So there's no point any train coming off that station and heading up here if there's already a train kind of in this section of track, like this dude, because they just run into him. So before heading into there, they need to check all the way forward to here to make sure that there's an open path for them to go. Because even if there's a train here, they'll be able to skip around to the other one. And that's kind of how you manage it. So with chain signals, you can look way ahead and still kind of keep everything in order. And a lot of this is trial and error. Like, my system it works for the most part, and I've had a lot of trial and error and had to fix stuff. Blue basically means there's an option. So it means, well, if you're going to go one way, then it'll be clear, but if you're going to go another way, it'll be blocked. So depending on where you want to go, this could be a stop, or it could be a go. But, yeah. It gets super complex, especially when you start thinking about a lot of tracks which have one track where there's multiple dudes going. So if we zoom out again, you can see here, like this whole section here, this is all one section. And you can see the trains moving around here. Like this guy was waiting there because there was a train coming all the way through here. Because it's a shared track and you don't know if this train is going to head down this way or if he's going to go straight into him or whatever. So like this guy will have to wait because there's a dude on the track, but then he'll come in. And I reckon that's a coal train. No. Could be actually. No, he's waiting again. And look, there's other trains here. This guy's going to come in. This guy's going to come in. So yeah, they select priority based on where they're going and what they're doing. But because of the way the signals are set up, like this guy's still waiting up here because this train wanted to come through here. There's even another train here which he's going to have to wait for. Oh no, he's made it through. So sometimes it can look like quite inefficient as far as the signaling goes, because like if you want to go from here to here, you have to go through a whole lot of shared tracks. So all these signals are all chained together so that you know basically if there's anything up here, you're not even going to bother going beyond this point. And it works for the most part. It's basically so that trains don't hit each other. And then we get over here and stuff, and this is a bit simpler because a lot of this is one way. So like this is a one-way intersection here that goes around like that and comes back out. This is all one way through this loop. This is kind of a shared track, but not a lot comes through this bit, so we don't usually have to worry. This is just a one-way little loop here that connects those two. It takes coal from here to here, and that's it. This is a train that picks up some oil, heads around here, comes down, goes through, and drops it off here. So again, he doesn't have very far to go. This gets complex because there's oil that comes through here and around and back up, and then down here oil gets dropped off, and then this train has to eventually make its way over here to pick up some more oil. And yeah, it gets complex very quickly. And there's little things you can do, like you can see these little side parts here, because it basically gives you a moment of, if everything is backed up, you can maybe skip around here and come through because another train can fit there and just kind of park there and not worry about it. But essentially, yeah, the trains are heaps of fun because, oh man, the signaling involved in some of these areas. You can see like this guy's going to wait here now. Why is he waiting there? Oh, he probably wants to come up through here. But because there's a train there, he's not going to make it. This guy's going to come down. And then where's he going? he going up there? Yeah. So he was waiting for this train, even though he was way back here. But because this is like a side, there's 3 tracks here where they can wait. He can wait there out of the way of everybody, and then skip up when it's free. And that's due to all that signalling. So this guy, he's heading straight up, because that train's already left. And then these guys, he's waiting for this guy to get out of the way. So, you know, I find it really cool, but, you know, I like train sets. But organising all the signalling and stuff, like this stuff, like these are all chain signals here. This isn't, you know, figuring out which ones go where and what the optimal kind of way of doing it is. I mean, at the moment, this station doesn't even get accessed anymore because there's no ore coming in because they'd all got mined out. So no one's stopping at these stations anymore. So I could basically delete this whole section. But I haven't got around to that yet because it doesn't really matter. I kind of like leaving it there and just going, I remember how it was there. But you can see, and like even here, like this is a station here, so they come in here, drop off, but then, I mean, what's going on here? Like, this track comes in, but if I want to go that way, I have to see where this dude goes. Okay, so he's going to go down there, because he's taking his sulfur somewhere else, but he could go down here and around, but all this signaling has to be there, so that with all this mess, they don't smash into each other, and hey, I really like that. I think it's a really cool system, because it's very logical. You know, it's very much, well, if a light ahead of this one says stop, then stop. Or like, you know, if I want a train to go through here, oh, more research finished, isn't that nice? But if I want a train to go through here, then I need to make sure that all of this is clear before I say go. Otherwise, if I go, then this guy might come around and hit him. And oh, it's so much fun. I really enjoy it anyway. But let's go for a quick little... See, this is where you can, you know, often I could be messing with it just by jumping in a train and going somewhere. But let's go to... Ooh. Trying to remember where things are. I think I want to go to... a nuke ore pickup mid-little, yeah. Because that's going to take me closer to where I want to go. It's not going to take me exactly where I want to go. Ah, see, I've messed things up by putting this train on. I think, yeah. No, I was just waiting for that guy. Okay, that's cool. But you can see as we cruise through, like... Obviously, each train has to automatically be able to create a path from it to its destination. And that's where all the signalling comes in. Where you can designate like one-way tracks so it won't go down that track from the incorrect direction. Like all of these I think are one-way. Yeah, like you can't get into this area from this side. Like going from right to left, you have to go up this track. So then it keeps everything flowing that way. But that's kind of where we're at with Factorio. And, you know, I know it sounds pretty random and there's a lot to take in, but hey, let's have a quick look at the mods like Hell Mod and call it a day. So, with the rocketry stuff. So over here I showed you this. This is how we finish the game by launching a rocket from here. And that's that. But the amount of resources it takes to do that are phenomenal. Like, I only get like one every hour or two at the moment. Like, it's really slow because my production of these guys over here is not even worth it. And I've tried to up my circuit production. I've tried to add more like through here. I've tried to add more of these. I've tried to do so much to boost it with the existing kind of messed up setup that I have. See over here there's some more. But it never works out as well as I'd like. So I thought, hang it all. Now that I've got this set up, I've got all the basics going. So, you know, all the basic components that I need are there. What I'm now going to do is come over here, which we can look at on the map again, to this completely different place to make resources on a much larger scale and try to do more rocket stuff. And my aim is to from what I calculated, is that with these with this setup over here, I'm going to be able to launch a rocket every 12.5 minutes, which, you know, doesn't sound like much, but I'm basically making 40 rocket parts every 5 minutes, or I will be anyway. So the first rocket part is rocket fuel, and I'm making about 80 of them every minute. So what that means is I want to be able to make 80 of everything else every minute as well. So to launch a rocket, you need rocket fuel, and then you need I forget what it's called. Where is it? This one. What is that? I forget what that's called. This stuff. Low density structure. And you need these guys. Rocket control units. They're the hardest thing to make, so I haven't got to that yet. But at the moment, I'm working on the low density structure. So here you can see I'm mining ore from this patch, and this patch to then feed these furnaces to create steel plates, or iron plates rather, which then feed these furnaces, which create steel bars or plates, whatever they're called. But they create steel. And the reason I have so many of these guys is thanks to Hellmod, which is this guy right here. And you can see this is what I'm working on. And basically you add in a recipe, and I'm not going to go through it completely, but this is this is the sort of thing that kind of enhances the game. Like after launching the first rocket, I was kind of done. I'm like, okay, well, I kind of half-assed that, but I can't really get much further without half-assing the rest. Whereas this gives me something else to work on. Basically, I want 400 low-density structures, and over here I select 5 minutes. So I want 400 every 5 minutes, so that's 80 per minute. Makes sense? Bit of maths, but whatever. So that's what this first line is here. So to make 400 every 5 minutes, I need 4,000 steel plates, 2,000 copper plates, and 2,000 plastic bars. So the first thing I worked on was steel plates. And that's where we got to this number here. So all of this gear creates 4,000 steel plates every 5 minutes, which is this number here. The next thing to do is work on copper plates. So by clicking on these, you can expand as I've done here. So if I can even get rid of them and just show you. I can click on that and go, okay, so to make 2,000 copper plates, I need 2,000 ore going into 12 furnaces to make that. This is in every 5 minutes. That's the time frame we're talking here. So to get 2,000 ore into 12 furnaces every 5 minutes, I need 10 mining drills mining 2,000 ore. Because 10 mining drills will mine 2,000 ores every 5 minutes. And then I feed that into 12 furnaces, and that will create our 2,000 copper plates that I can feed into 32 assembling machines to make 400 low-density structures every 5 minutes. Same with plastic bars. If I click on that, you can see to make plastic bars, we need petroleum gas and we need coal. I need to feed those into 3 chemical plants to be able to make 2,000 plastic bars. But in order to do that, for the coal, I need 5 mining drills mining coal that gets fed directly into the chemical plants. Are we confused yet? Because we could be. To make petroleum gas, I can now select how I want to make it. So I'm going to make it through advanced oil processing. So to make 20,000 petroleum gas every 5 minutes, I need 7 oil refineries. And I need 18,000 water coming in. Can I actually see that? Which will take basically one... If it says 0, it's basically one pump to go into an oil refinery, and that will also spit out then heavy oil and light oil, which are byproducts that need to be used up. So what I can do with those is I can do what's called cracking and turn them into petroleum gas, so that all I need to use is petroleum gas. Or I can turn heavy oil into light oil, and then I can turn light oil into gas. And then all I need to do is feed that gas into the 3 chemical plants, which will then mix that with the coal and pump out our 2,000 our 4,000, no, 2,000, I'm getting confused already. Our 2,000 plastic bars every 5 minutes. So you can see how it gets confusing super quick. But that's how we get these numbers. And it actually works, and it's actually really satisfying. Because if we head over to... That's how I got to these numbers to make rocket fuel. So, here's an oil field. These are all pump jacks. They're pumping oil into these tanks, right? And then I did the maths thanks to Helmod. And we've got, I think, something like 25 oil refineries here. So these are all processing oil. If we go up there, we can actually see what they're doing. Not that far away, so we should be able to do it. So if we click on this, we can see it's actually producing more petroleum gas than's being used. Because these oil refineries produce heavy oil, light oil, and petroleum gas from water and crude oil. So what I need to do is figure out my ratios a bit better and use more heavy oil and more light oil so that these guys can keep firing and keep shoving out petroleum gas. But it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, petroleum is the one that we want. The thing is, if we weren't using enough heavy oil or light oil, that would block us from getting petroleum, so that could be a real bummer. Because you can see down here, they process the raw oil into whatever, send it to tanks. Those tanks then get used by these chemical plants to create solid fuel from that material, from petroleum or heavy oil or light oil. And you can see there's only 3 heavy oil chemical plants here. There's a few more light oil ones, but then there's the most with petroleum, because from this process we're creating way more petroleum than we are anything else. You can see on the right there's 10 heavy oil, 45 light oil, and 55 petroleum. So we need to use up more petroleum than anything else. And then that all gets fed into this number of assembly machines, which was like the golden number, that are all making rocket fuel out of these solid fuels. And that's all getting fed into this chest. And at the moment it's all backed up because that's where it ends. But once I have my other products, like the rocket control circuits and the low density, or whatever it is, low density structures or whatever they're called, once I have those 3, they will then feed a rocket silo which can launch rockets. So you can see how with Helmod, and with something to actually do the maths for you, or to help you with the maths, because there's such big numbers and ratios and all that kind of stuff, which I just couldn't be bothered with, honestly. I'm sure a lot of people could, and that's why there's much more elegant designs online that you could find than anything I've done. But with the help of that sort of thing, you can create a much more efficient and productive factory. That hopefully, hopefully this sort of stuff and like this sort of stuff, we'll have to keep redoing these, raw materials as they run out. But it's not going to end up like, like this shit. Like, hopefully it means that this will always be saturated if I'd use the proper ratio. Because obviously I'm not producing enough stuff to produce these circuits, which then in turn have a knock-on effect, as in, because I'm not producing enough of these circuits, I'm not producing enough of these circuits, which rely on them to be made. And because I'm not producing enough of these circuits, then I'm not producing enough of these science packs or these... whatchamacallits, whatever they're called, the rocket control modules, so on and so forth. Or I'm not producing enough red circuits because I'm not producing enough green circuits, and so on and so forth. It's a whole production chain thing. And that's kind of the essence of why Factorio is really cool, because it's a lot of fun just fiddling with that stuff and like building all this mass scale things, and especially when it actually works. It's one thing to be playing with trains and all that kind of stuff, but when you mass scale this stuff, like at the moment I can just put this down and robots build it all for me. So this didn't take very long to build because I just got robots to do it. Which is why, you can see all these blue things are roboports where I've expanded the network. If we look at it, that's my network that the robots can reach. This is our power grid. So it's much more organized at this new area. That's our pollution. That's all our train stops. That's my name on and off. But you can see how there's like so much to it, but it's always so much fun. Oh, I don't know why that's there. I did start attempting this, but I realized I had my maths wrong, so I tore it all down, started again. So that's probably what that is from. Yeah. But yeah, it's the kind of fun I like to have. You can see up here I've already designated this oil field I'm going to use to make plastics. Probably for this low density structure or whatever it is. So I'll probably grab these copper fields as well to make the plates that I need. The plastics from here, and then we'll, assemble it all in the middle. That's the plan anyway. And that's why I cleared all this away from aliens and stuff. But yeah, that's Factorio. And that's pretty much where I'm going to leave it, ladies and gentlemen, because there's not a lot else to say. And it's just a really good game. It's for an early access game as well, I am super impressed because, like with any early access, you kind of expect it to be crap. To an extent. You might enjoy it, but it's going to be crap. Or it's going to be unfinished, or it's going to be, lacking in some way. And this is the kind of game... I mean, I've lost so many hours on this because it scratches that itch of, like SimCity or playing The Sims or... I don't know, I had the same experience when I first played GTA San Andreas, where I just got so sucked in and you just lose all track of time and... You have no idea. You look up and it's 3 hours later and you're like, holy fuck, how did I spend that much time on this thing? Because you get so engrossed and so, I don't know, just taken by it. And there's always something to do and there's always something compelling to like drive you forward. And you can always improve things and you can always add to things and you can always create more. So, it's just one of those types of games where you can just so easily get lost in it. And that's, I think, why I've spent so much time in it in the last however long, because the amount of times I've just thought, oh yeah, I'll just play a little bit of Factorio. And then I look up and it's like 2 hours have passed or something like that, and I kick myself going, oh shit, I better stop because I've got other things I need to do. Because I've got life to live. But yeah, it's incredible how deep it is for an early access game. Like, I'm surprised it's still in early access. But I'm assuming that's because there's, bug fixes and stuff and I don't know what. But yeah. Either way, I think with a few mods and stuff and the ability to shape the experience to how you like to play, kind of like SimCity, like, how there were cheats and stuff, you could always, just ignore having to earn cash and just build a city. And sometimes I'd do that. Sometimes you'd want the challenge though, so you'd want to balance everything properly and you'd be like, oh crap, I'm running out of money or I'm running out of resources or whatever. So you'd do that. Other times you just go, I just want to make something look cool and work. So you'd turn off all the difficulty and go for it. And it's that kind of vibe. And that's the kind of thing that I really like about this game is it gives you the options to play how you want to play, but there's also so much there to do and to look at that you don't ever feel like you're dumbing it down so much. So, I can't recommend it enough. Basically, like, I slept on it for a long time because I was like, it looks cool, but I, didn't really... No, it never grabbed me until I actually played it. And then I played it and I was like, holy cow, actually, there's a lot here to get stuck into. And that's sometimes the best kind of game to recommend because, yeah, if it doesn't really look like your thing, but you're a SimCity fan or you're that kind of player who likes that kind of game where like city builders or logic kind of things, or you like trains, like even just setting up the train network, like I've spent dozens of hours just fiddling with trains and had a lot of fun doing it. So, there's so much here and so much to do that I can't recommend it enough. But that's where I'm going to leave it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to continue working on this and hopefully start launching more rockets, and I'll call it a day. So thanks so much for watching and checking out Factorio. And hey, I recommend also googling around, looking on YouTube and stuff for other Factorio setups, like factories. Some people have made some amazing stuff, which is like super efficient, super compact, heaps better than anything you've seen me create here. So yeah, definitely recommend checking it out. But that's all from me today. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.